best way to beat the lockdown blues is to look forward to something. And for millions of people who love sports, they may be just an opportunity. As we wind down the week and, we look at what's coming next for India and the world, maybe a glimmer of good news is that the EPL is going to start from June. That's the English Premier League. Now, even if you don't particularly follow the EPL, the reason why it's an important story is because it could possibly pave the way for other sporting activities to follow through. There's already a lot of talk on how the IPL and if the IPL will go through this year, how it will look. There's a tussle right now at this moment on whether the T20 will take place in Australia, what will those dates be, whether they will clash with the IPL or not, because we know where the big money spinner is. And so it's not just cricket, it's a whole host of other sports and sporting activities and people who manage them who are figuring out right now on how to get back on track. But will all of these work without spectators? And is there a new normal for sports? To speak on this, I'm joined today and very happy to speak with Vivek Singh, co-founder and joint MD of Procam International and the absolute pro when it comes to sporting events. Mr. Singh, great to have you on the show. Just your take, does the announcement of the EPL starting in June give you some glimmer of hope?
First of all, thank you for having me. As a sporting fan, you wear your sporting fan hat on, you say, okay, whatever you're going to give me, I'm going to take it. Okay, so you're going to see viewership, you're going to see people excited about it, there's no question. But if I remove my sporting hat and I wear a hat of a sports promoter, which is what we've been for about 32 years now in India, it's a very challenging time. There are so many ends to actually cover. It's a very challenging time to try and do it without spectators, to try and get the matches show on the road. There are many questions. I know Germany has done it. We talked about the German Bundesliga having matches, and that's been great. But I'm not sure whether I would even go to call it a new normal. I think there's just certain measures that some people are taking.
You talked about being happy as a fan, but the new normal is going to be difficult. Should we now segregate this into contact sport and other kinds of sport? I'm a bit surprised that, contact sport like football is also beginning. So the one part is whether it's actually safe for players. How will you determine that it's safe? And on the other hand, will these sports that are driven by spectators, cricket is another great example of that, be the same without that energy of the roaring stadium?
There's no question about it. It's not the same. Let's come to terms with that. You cannot have live sport without spectators. But yes, these are not normal times. I don't differentiate so much. I agree. If you talk about wrestling, that's another level of contact sport. If you talk about judo, taekwondo, all of them. But every sport is sport, it's closeness, bonhomie, there's camaraderie, there is contact. And I don't think you can say football is a non-contact sport, cricket is a non-contact sport. Of course, it's non-contact in terms of traditional sense. But every sport is there's no social distancing that you can maintain in sport, and you shouldn't. It's crazy to even consider to have social distancing and sport go hand in hand. It's not possible. But having said that, I think kudos to these people. I think kudos to the English Premier League. I think kudos to the German Bundesliga. Getting out there and doing something and not just, we'll just see when the governments tell us and we'll open up. So I have full regard and respect for them. I think it's very difficult situation they're going through. They're going out of their way to make things happen. Look at what Bundesliga has done. They've got fans paying a small amount of money to have their own caricature, their own kind of cutouts, into stands. So when players are playing, they see these cutouts across the stadium. They think there are fans. They've got speakers which are amplifying spectator noise. So they're really doing a lot to create the atmosphere, but it's different. It's not a new normal for me. With respect, hats off to them. But I just hope that we get beyond this.
I have a slightly controversial question. What is fueling this move? Even, IPL or T20 or the Bundesliga, as you say, is it also because there's huge money riding on this? I mean, if the IPL is cancelled, it could be a loss of 4,000 crore rupees. So yes, all of that passion for sport is there, but these are huge revenue spinners, and a lot of people lose out. Would that then perhaps push these organizations to move forward, even though it may not necessarily be the safest thing to do or the smartest thing to do right now?
It's a good question. And you're right, there are huge commercial contracts at play. But we should understand that the commercial contracts are not just for a team or for a player, or for the owner or for the television broadcaster. There's an ecosystem that sits under sport. And if sport doesn't happen, the entire ecosystem is going to hurt a lot. So I would, yes, there definitely commercial considerations are weighing in heavily, and that is significant. There's no question about it. But that commercial consideration, the entire economy in certain cases, the entire ecosystem in certain cases, and it is important. The way they're going about it very professionally, very specifically. They're doing the pre-social, the pre-isolation for players. They're doing the pre-isolation for match referees. They're doing the pre-isolation for registered personnel that need to be there on the field. They're doing that. They're doing that for 10 and 14 days before each encounter, before each match. Yes, they're doing all that. And yes, it is commercially. But I think, all that is relevant and it has to be given its due weightage as well.
Okay, let me ask you in the context of the IPL. Do you think that the IPL will be pushed through even in the beginning of lockdown 4.0? Part of the relaxations allowed, practice in stadium, etc. And that kind of paved the way for this conversation of, whether the IPL will happen. Is IPL in the too big to fail category? You have to make it happen. And plus, you want to cheer up people who would love to sit at home and see it. How much of a difference will it make if IPL is played without spectators and just viewers at home?
We're going into very uncharted territory here, and I appreciate that. But I think IPL should happen. No question about it. Now, obviously, it determines as to when and what the ground situation is at that time and how many spectators do they allow into the stadium. There are many ifs and buts, but it should happen. And if there's any chance that the entire ecosystem, that's the government, the Board of Control for Cricket, the other stakeholders should come together and see that it happens. We can't underestimate the power that sport brings and has to the overall social well-being, to the social conversation that exists in India. You can't just take that away. So I'm going to go out there and say it should happen. Of course, there are many things to consider, and it's easy for people. It should happen. It should happen in the safest way that it's possible to happen. But we should all really go out and try and make it happen.
What if, and I don't want to be a prophet of doom here, but what if there is a scenario where, there is a positive case somewhere in the team or someone who is part of the whole, situation? Want to throw a spanner in the works? How can you avoid that at all and be 100% sure that this doesn't happen?
Listen, of course it'll throw a spanner in the works, but there are bigger questions to answer. What about international travel to India? Can IPL happen without international players? I don't think so. I think it's a great idea. What about unrestricted domestic travel? Are we going to talk about shrinkage of venues? Are we going to talk about 2 venues rather than 8 venues? So I think, I think there are big questions that need to be answered. And therefore, you can't take anything for granted. But they're talking about 3-4 months later down the road. We cannot really see what's going to happen 3-4 months down the road. Maybe things are very different than what it is.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Things might.
What it is today.
Yeah. Things may pick up.
I just feel if you ask a question, then I think it's very important that 100 times you think before you say no. And things like the IPL should be allowed. They should happen. You need people to get back into some kind of sanity. Of course, safety is important. And of course, all those things are a given, no question about it. So it's a little early day out there to make some large predictions, but I got my fingers crossed on both hands.
Okay, give me an idea, Mr. Singh, that this version of an IPL without spectators, would it also mean lower revenues all around, lower ad revenues? What does it mean for the franchisees? And what does it mean for endorsements and for the players? Does everyone sort of take a cut?
So it does mean lower revenues. In many cases, there are 50-50 sharing between the stadium authorities and the teams. You know, that's the general formula. They share that the gate receipts 50-50. Certain cases, it goes all to the stadium. There are many permutations and combinations. It does mean lower revenues. And I think if there is a lower revenue, then yes, it should be across the board. The cut should be across the board, including players. Should be across the board. Everybody's a stakeholder. Everybody's got skin in the game, and the cut should be across the board.
You know, that's a great point you've made. That's why I'm going to press you on it a little more. So you think players should take a cut as well, because the whole ecosystem is going to be hit, and by how much?
Exactly. The whole ecosystem is hurting, and everybody has to take a cut and get the show on the road. This is what I mean, you know. Everybody should go and stretch themselves a little bit to get the show on the road, whether it's the authorities, whether it's the stadium, whether it's the players, whether it's the team owner, whether it's the board of control. Everybody needs to step out there and see, is there a way to make it happen? Of course, safety comes first, but is there a way to make it happen? If there is a way, that way should be given the most opportunity. Absolutely.
You've given us a great headline there, Mr. Singh. Pleasure to have you on the show. IPL should get on. We should get the show on the road. We have to be super safe and careful about it. But the whole ecosystem will have to take a cut. These are different times that we're looking at, and we don't know for how long they will really last. Mr. Singh, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.